Have you or someone you know experienced unexplained health issues potentially linked to electronic warfare? Project Archimedes, in conjunction with law firm Disabled Rights Advocates, is leading a groundbreaking worldwide action against the United States government, focusing on the impacts of 5G, EMF, and other unexplained phenomena, including what's known as Havana Syndrome.
We're dealing with energy weapons,
permanent brain injuries, the unexplained, serious medical harm connected to a mysterious direct energy weapon.
It was like this piercing feeling on the side of my head.
If you've suffered from symptoms like headaches, dizziness, memory loss, or other unusual health effects that you believe could be related to these technologies, we want to hear from you. We are seeking justice for those affected by these potentially harmful technologies.
Sharp, localized ear pain, dull unilateral headache, tinnitus or ringing in one ear, vertigo, visual focusing issues, disorientation, nausea, and extreme fatigue.
This was the most terrifying experience of my life. I had no control.
By joining this movement, you could help prevent future harm and potentially seek compensation for what has been endured.
We have created a global class action lawsuit. Foreign litigants would be availed to the U.S. courts to seek recovery for those who caused the damage. All roads point back to the United States.
To learn more about your rights, potential eligibility, and how to join the movement, visit projectarchimedes.org.
So we're going to sue in the United States with people from all over the planet who qualify to be a plaintiff simply on the basis that they spend an hour or more a day within 100 meters of a 5G transmitter.
Project Archimedes and attorney Todd Callender are committed to fighting for those who have been impacted.
These are the people who can't fight for themselves. They're the ones who can't hire the lawyer.
Visit projectarchimedes.org today to find out more about joining the movement.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a lovely day in the United States of America, or the mostly United States of America. How are you doing today, Todd?
Lord above challenges, John. But you're looking like the producer that you are. It's very Hollywood looking for today. I like it very much. You look distinguished.
Thank you. Yes, it's called a bad hair day. And in desperation, I lost the battle and just said, I'm going to wear a kagoo.
Is that what that's
It looks
called?
better on Mickey Willis.
It's kagoo.
Yeah.
I love that. Is that like Mr. Magoo? I mean,
I guess so. I don't know.
myself.
Samuel Jackson made them famous,
right.
so I'm now making them infamous,
All right.
I guess.
Yeah, infamous means more than famous. It means it's going to outlive you.
Hey,
kagoo.
Did you see the White House press correspondence dinner this weekend?
No, fresh out of correspondence dinner.
No,
what happened?
Good. Nobody did. But the good news for them is they finally sort of maybe admitted that they missed a lot of the story around Joe Biden's decline.
Oh, go figure.
Yes, this is the this is the slowest admission of guilt to complete terrible news coverage possible. And speaking of news coverage today, we have a great guest, Sam Anthony, who runs yournews.com.
Yes, exactly. This is going to be cool because as everybody forgets about commercial media, this is the way you find the good stuff, even locally. I can't wait to hear how he does this. This is going to be really fun.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome.
So I'll step out and you lead us with some great headlines.
So. Thank you very much, John. And to you and the rest of the Clout Hub, Vax Choice, and LibertyClub.net. Please, folks, visit Liberty Club. It's a new platform. It's part of our group. It's got additional functionality. You can do anything and everything there that you would otherwise do at all of your other social media sites. You can do it all in one place. I hope that you will give it a try. It's LibertyClub, all one word, .net. And then you'll see some changes happening in Clout Hub as well, folks. So we're doing the 2.0 version. It's soon to be released. John is being exceedingly helpful in leading that charge because we're not out of the woods yet. We never are, if you can believe these gangsters. As long as we've been working on stopping the shots all the way back to 2020 for a lot of folks that have been here. Here we go again. Now they're going to make an mRNA Marburg shot, something to help us stop a Marburg infection. Who's dying of Marburg? You know, anybody, this is an Ebola-like disease. It's viral hemorrhagic fever. You're supposed to be falling over dead, bleeding out of your orifices. If you can imagine this, we're in the middle of a Marburg pandemic right now. Our government made the official declaration that we're in a Marburg pandemic. How is that possible? How does one arrive at that conclusion? What is a pandemic? And for those of you that have been paying attention, you know this is legal trickery. This is what I call dirty lawyer tricks. And we're in the second one. The first one was declared with the creation of the PrEP Act, which is the means by which vaccine manufacturers and everybody that handed out the evil COVID poison shots gets indemnified. You can't sue them. You can't find any redress in courts. We're going to get to that in a second because they cut it all off. So we were in a Marburg pandemic for the purpose of what? Revoking your human and constitutional rights. That's why we're in a Marburg pandemic. And now what they're going to do is create a vaccine to protect you against a disease that we created. Our Department of Energy created it, and then they unleashed it where in Rwanda and places like that. And now they're going to run a vaccine for this, right? Sure, it's a vaccine. It's poison, nothing but poison. So I mentioned to you a second ago, please remember that law enforcement, corrections, public health, and I'm going to say it twice, the judiciary were amalgamated into one so that you couldn't have any redress. Should we be surprised now that we see all the way back to the 1970s? This is a document, and we're going to have it in the show notes so you can look at it yourself. This is how the federal courts are supposed to be involved in behavior modification. How about that? Individual rights and behavior modification. So who knew the guys on the bench were actually tasked with changing your behavior? And I don't mean this in necessarily a good way. They're talking about shaping the way that society works. And that leads to our friend Reimer Fulmick. If you can imagine that. This poor guy, what was he doing? The same thing we are, trying to stop the shots, and he's stuck in a German prison for another 3 years or more. No time served. It turns out that leaks came about probably from prison guards, if I were to guess, because he's unjustly convicted, was never allowed to put on a defense. And what did we find? Leaks. Oh yeah, the German intelligence services, the secret police. They used to call them Stasi in the Eastern German days when it was part of the Soviet Union. Guess what? He was the man to be stopped at all costs. If you don't know the story, he was in Mexico trying to be free with his wife, and they needed to have their passports renewed. They go to the German embassy in Mexico City, where Reiner is nabbed by the German secret police in the embassy, and then he was flown directly from Mexico to Germany, where he's been sitting in solitary confinement for a long time, at least a year, if not two by now. And they are torturing Reiner. And God love him, he's the guy that created the COVID investigative committee. If you haven't seen it, they interviewed about 3,000 people trying to get word out, experts in everyday things like law and medicine and science, and people who just simply suffered as a result of these shots, or they had knowledge about the shots. Reiner is being persecuted. God love him for telling the truth. And that's the issue here, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the truth business, and this is our guest who's going to talk to us about it. But the reality is this. They don't want Reiner, they don't want me, they don't want you getting in the way of their property. That's right. We've been saying it for some time. Let us not forget the phrase homoborgenesis. Why? Because they claim ownership over us. Sin bio. The paper's right there. It's from our government. You can look it up. It's the Department of Commerce, and I would encourage you to look at page 76 because they talk about people as chattel property, meaning those that got the shots. According to U.S. Supreme Court precedent, the case is called molecular pathology versus myriad genetics. If you got the mRNA shots, you belong to the patent holders. You are a syn bio creature that will be utilized for their purposes. I made a case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court saying, hey, you can't own people. We outlawed it in 1865. That's called slavery. 13th Amendment prohibits you from owning people in the United States of America. And the U.S. Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, said, blah, 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 we don't want to hear what you have to say. Because these people that are turned into synbio creatures are being used for their biorhythms, meaning, in other words, generation of energy, storage of information, storage of energy, batteries, power supplies, and cloud computing nodes. If you haven't seen it, it's already been commercialized. Look it up for yourself, dev.inpersona.com. They've already used 1.4 trillion heartbeats to mine cryptocurrency. That is the plan for us. And they say, oh, by the way, we need to know what's going on under your skin. Why would they need to do that? Because you're their chattel property. They want to know everything because your cells are being harnessed to be their power supply and to be their storage space, their hard drive for their cloud computing. And they want to know everything about you. But you don't have to listen to me saying that. Who's the architect of this crap? Noah Harari. That was, what's his name? Klaus Schwab's butt boy. He's a professor of God knows what technology or something like that in Tel Aviv, as memory serves. Let's hear what he had to say in 2021. We're just catching up.
We need to realize that humans are now hackable animals. You can hack them. And if you just leave the basically 18th century system or 19th century system that we've inherited without major changes, the result will be an emotional puppet show. And whatever replaces us, it will be different from us much more than we are different from Neanderthals. We are still very much like Neanderthals. There are tiny differences. But if you look at our bodies, at our brains, at our basic emotional abilities, at our social relations, we are still apes. We are still very similar to Neanderthals, to chimpanzees, and the rest of our cousins. But whatever replaces Homo sapiens, when we really master the new abilities of re-engineering life, either on an organic basis with genetic engineering and things like that, or on an inorganic basis, whatever replaces us, it will be much, much more different. In the sense that, for example, just to give one example, I mean, we and chimpanzees and also elephants and porcupines and whatever other animal you care to think about, in order to exist and to function, we have to be in the same place at the same time. All the parts of our body needs to be here now for them to function. If you separate my hands and legs from my body, they don't work anymore. And I probably don't work anymore. But if, for example, we solve the problem, and there are many people working on that, and we are making very fast progress on the problem of directly connecting brains to computers, and therefore also brains to all kinds of bionic parts, you can have non-organic limbs and non-organic body parts which are disconnected from your body.
Figured out that already happened. Right? They already implanted nanobots, trillions of them, and the people that got the shots. In the case of Moderna and Pfizer, they used messenger RNA, synthetic RNA. In the case of Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, they used synthetic DNA. Either way, people were genetically modified and implanted with all the tools for Noah Harari's wet dream that he just told you about all the way back to 2021. How much do you want to bet none of that ever appeared on Fox? None of that ever appeared on CNN or any other commercial media. Why? Because they're in on it. Because they're owned and they are controlled for the purpose of controlling and owning you. Today our guest is Sam Anthony. This is going to be fascinating. How do we get information that isn't controlled by the commercial media, by the owners of this world? Sam is here to tell us about it. So Sam, welcome to Truth Be Told. You are my hero, brother. So tell us about you. How did you get here? You created your own company. I know it's called Nico Ventures, but at the end of the day, you're making it possible for hundreds of thousands of people to be their own journalists. Tell us a story.
Sure. Well, first of all, Todd, great to meet you. Great to be
Likewise.
here. Always wanted to say hello to you, so I finally got the chance.
Hello.
We had to be at a show to do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I started in this business many years ago, and at the time, I did not believe that we had an issue with the media. I just was an entrepreneur and believed that the legacy media was going to eventually fold because the internet was going to transform it. And out of that would arise new digital properties that would ultimately replace them. No different than going from the telegraph to the telephone or the horse and buggy to the automobile, right? There's always a product that replaces something else. So I certainly was right. The internet transformed the media landscape. But now what I've realized is what I'm doing is far greater than I ever thought.
Yes.
Right. And because I was not a believer that the media was lying. I mean, I was living under a rock or something. But I will tell you that I woke up in 2016 when Trump won the election. And that's what, I mean, anybody couldn't see it then, was blind as a bat. I mean, they just went right after him. You could obviously tell they completely took a side. You could obviously tell that the rest of the government wasn't working with him. They were going after him for everything. And I'm like, what? Everything. And so that's when you have to start figuring it out. And, the conclusion I formed was that we have basically a state-controlled media, I mean, and then people would say, well, that's propaganda. Well, turns out it wasn't, because anybody who saw USAID, the numbers and the billions of dollars that went to the mainstream media, 160 million went to 6,000 journalists, 37 million dollars went to Politico. Give me a break. Okay. I mean, think about it. Amazing money. A freaking website. All right. That's at $37 million. So, obviously that has been debunked, and now it's no longer, a theory. They actually were getting paid to push propaganda. The good news is that whole industry is imploding. And and I'm sure it, and some people say, oh, well, they're not going to stay in business because they're lying. I'm like, no. They're not going to stay in business because nobody's watching. Whether the lying just sped up the process, but just look at the younger generation. And by the way, Todd, did you see the numbers from Adweek by any chance for the first quarter?
No, no. Tell me.
I'll give you the three numbers from Fox. Had 3 million viewers for the quarter. Okay, that's
wait. You for the quarter.
For the quarter, okay. MSNBC had a little over 1 million for the quarter. Yeah, this is the first quarter, right? So January, February, March. So in April came out, and then CNN had 588. So say 600,000. So you're talking a couple 100,000 people a month. That's not the news. Here's the news. Fox News, between the age group of 25 and 54, had 380,000 viewers. Okay. MSNBC had, and if I'm off by a few people, whatever. Okay, I'm going to round the number, 53,000, and CNN at 79. That one I remember.
Over the course of what, a month, a quarter, what time period?
3 months.
Okay, 3 months, 1 quarter. In that age range, one of them had like 58,000 viewers, 25 to 40. So
CNN had 79, and MSNBC had 53. So the three numbers combined are roughly 500,000. Give or take, right? It's okay. Yep. So, but what do you think the age group between 25 and 54 is? I'm going to say north of 100 million. Okay?
Oh gosh, yes.
125. Yes. So my point is, if it's 125,500,000 people, we're the other 125 million people getting their information. And
exactly right.
That is the problem, right? For them, not for us.
It sounds like a good problem for them to have.
So if they were telling the truth, it would almost be identical. It wouldn't matter.
That's right.
Okay, because the average age of people watching cable news is 70 plus. Somebody in the cable business told me the other day, you're wrong at 73. So that's why I used the plus. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, and that's radio on the dial too. I was a guy I was talking to out of Arizona, and he does a lot of conservative talk radio advertising. And he told me that the average person he picks up is between 65 and 70. So, the average could be 75, but
sure.
Yeah. So it was for trading, like stock trading, and he advertises on conservative radio, and they buy his program or whatever it is, but it's just the older crowd. Now you're not going to get any of the people, the 25, 30-year-olds there. They're on TikTok. They're on Instagram. Yeah. Right? They're watching alternative news somewhere else, is my point. Yes. And so that whole industry is going to collapse. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing for us. Now, when they kick when YouTube kicked off, and I don't know if you had a show at that time, but when they kicked the people off of YouTube that were telling the truth when COVID came around, basically we were all sitting here going, holy crap, what do we do? And
what now?
Well, right. But Rumble was there at 2013 is when they started, and it just happened to be there, got lucky, filled the void. Right. And now they have like a $2 billion market cap. And now the conservative movement has been expanding and growing, and we have free speech platforms. Well, not a lot of them, but we have a handful of them. And so we've got our own infrastructure in place. The left has literally nothing. Okay. That's the whole key. So they're going to be screwed in the future. But out of it, when you're talking news, remember, there's still a demand for news. It's just the way people consume it has changed. So everything, I don't care what story it is, it happened somewhere, right? Even if it makes national news, a bomb going off in Miami is still local in Miami. It just, you could make it national news. Yes. So, local news is the key, because we still have, I'm sure Mark and Mark Shafleen and General Flynn, and they've got the Patriot TV, and you got Mike Liddell, which you got Frank Speech, all these websites. So whether it's what's the other one called? It's Breitbart or The Hill. I mean, these are all trying to fight disinformation, okay, from the legacy media, and they're doing a great job. But what they're not covering is the city council meeting in Schaumburg, Illinois, football game in Denver, Colorado, and that news has kind of slipped away. So what I'm doing is bringing back the local newspaper. And by the way, I'm going to share some stats with you. Do you know how I measure people, like the marketplace on LinkedIn, based on how many freelance journalists there are for the media industry? And years ago, there was like 50 or 60,000 freelance journalists. There's almost 500,000.
I saw that in one of your interviews. I was gobsmacked by that. 500,000.
490 is the actual number. But remember, it goes up and down because people that have been there for 2 years go screw it, and then they're working at McDonald's or something. They just take themselves off of it. So there's almost 500,000. Then the interesting part is, look at all the kids in school that are going to journalism school. Because if you had a kid in school and you weren't in the media industry, and they're studying journalism so they can get a job at a newspaper or something, you as a dad, your advice might be, what the hell are you doing? That whole industry is imploding. Well, the reality is, I think they're going to experience the greatest time in history, because they're going to be the ones that replace the old guard.
Yes. Well, and replace 100%. Them ideally. Well, one of the things I want to understand, because this is your business, right? And it's really important. I want people to understand this. This is why I was so fascinated. Is all news is local, right? We consume news because we want to know what's happening around us. How does it affect us? A bombing in Miami probably doesn't have much effect on me in what it is I do in my life. But I can tell you, if there's a bombing in the Bahamas, I need to know that. And so what you're doing is making it possible to get local news on a decentralized system. And I think that's really critical. And what I want to understand is how do we help people have the thirst for truth that drove your behavior and mine? These young journalists coming out of school, they're indoctrinated with God knows what. How do we get them to thirst for the truth? Is it because that's what consumers want?
Well, it is what consumers want. However, are you familiar with Alex Newman? Do you know who Alex is?
Yeah, I sure do.
Okay, so was it Amber May had asked me, she said, have you ever talked to Alex Newman? I said, no. She goes, would you like me to connect you with him? So she did.
Sharp guy.
Very sharp. And I knew he was the editor of the New American, but I never saw his bio before. Have you ever read the guy's bio? It's like incredible.
Yes.
Okay, we had a conversation, and he's just like listening, going, can you get on a Zoom call and show me this? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. So I start showing him, and he stops me and he goes, what's your email address? And I tell him, and he says, well, I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm sending you my resume. I'm like,
oh, that's cool.
And I said, okay, send me your resume. He goes, Sam, it's very obvious and clear. You're the next mainstream media. You're the guy that's going to replace it. I want to be part of it. Look at my resume. Call me tomorrow. So I sent it off to my partner. I said, do you know Alex Newman? She goes, yeah. I said, well, he wants to join us. She's like, you're kidding. Right. So
isn't that fabulous?
Right. So he here's his interest. He has joined us, and his interest, he's putting
Brilliant.
together the, what do they call it? The journalism ethics for your news, right? For the journalists. Because remember, I own a platform. I'm like
Right.
you own a platform. I'm not in the news business. I'm in the platform business. Okay.
Right.
It's like you and I built a football stadium. We ain't playing in the NFL, but we bring and then, they played a game and we sell all the tickets and all the, the stuff in between, the concessions. So his interest is in creating that. And then he wants to train the student journalists.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
have Zoom classes, because I have all the email databases of them, right? So he wants to invite them to a class, and then he wants to bring other names in and bigger names in, and then have them talk to the journalists. And maybe the class is, how to write a good story that
I love
engages
that.
an audience and make sure you dot all your I's and cross, something like that, which I think I already knew I needed it. It fell in my lap.
That is so cool. Well, because what you're doing is so obvious once it dawns on you what this is really truly about. And it's one of those things you say, why didn't I think of this? But I love the fact that you're bringing ethics to this. You're bringing training from people who are not only really established, but also ethical, because that's the one thing that's really been missing from the information business is ethics. It used to be, when the Smith-Mundt Act existed, that it was illegal for the press to use propaganda. Obama undid that and made it completely legal. And of course, it went hyper speed on propaganda to the point where probably our government newspapers, when they call commercials, should be called Pravda. Back to the Soviet days. What I want to understand, which I think is critically important, how are you able to direct traffic from me in the Caribbean? If I want to access people watching in Denver, Colorado, how are you able to do that?
So the content we have, our product is similar to Facebook in that we have a user base just like you, right? And so the way our model works is we have a monetization model for news reporters. So I can take some out of work news reporter somewhere. It could be not in the Bahamas, because I don't have a Bahamian section.
Well, you do now.
There you go. But somebody that writes a story about the high school football game anywhere in America, could be in Denver, could be in Miami, it doesn't matter. So we publish that to the sports section for that market. And then what they do is they have a following, people that like their content, right? And they share the link to their followers, and they just come to me to consume it, and they share in the ad revenue. All our job is just selling advertising. That's it.
That's really beautiful.
So if I have 1 million content creators, I get 1 million times the traffic, right? And then everybody has a different audience. So, my mother said to me one day, you ought to be a podcaster or an influencer. I'm like, well, no,
you are.
I'm the king of the influencers. Because it doesn't matter if I've got somebody in Chicago that has 3,000 followers that's doing local Chicago-based news, or if it's somebody like I'm bringing on someone here shortly that's got 1.5 million followers.
Yeah,
right.
That counts.
The Chicago people are Chicago, but the 1.5 is just scattered everywhere. So when they log in, we geolocate them, and I know who's reading that story in Chicago, Miami, Phoenix, LA, and then we could pull ads based on geography by subject.
Got it. Well, that makes perfect sense. It's interesting because it's something that we had chose with CloutHub. Like you, the reason we did this was to get word out, because we recognized that our species was under attack, that we're in World War III and the wars on humanity. So it was really more about getting information out than it was anything else. And one of the things I promised to people as they came to our platforms is we're not collecting anything on you. I don't want to know. You're anonymous, like cash. Just come here and use it and get what it is you need. But the other side of it is that we're really missing out on what it is you're talking about, which is making things that are important to them in their lives, in their place, relevant to them and directed to them. And I think that's pretty cool. So it's a geolocation kind of a technology that helps you do that.
Yeah, basically it's like bringing back the local paper in every city in America with USA Today wrapped around it all.
Yeah, I get that. And I saw also when you're saying somebody wants to become a journalist, know your news, they've got to come and effectively apply to you. Walk us through that process.
We advertise right now. I'm doing it just on LinkedIn, but I'm going to start broadening that out shortly as soon as the ads are created. And I'm targeting specifically the student journalists on LinkedIn because they're going to have nowhere to go, number one. Number two, I look at them as not part of the problem, right? So
Not yet.
not yet. We're in a whole new set of problems. But what they do is if they click the link, they watch a video, and then if they like what they hear, they could fill out the application. Application comes into us. They have to put in their their LinkedIn page, and if they have anything else we could see, just so we kind of know who we're dealing with. And it has nothing to do with conservative or liberal, because we are a free speech platform. It just has to do, I just want to make sure we don't have somebody that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs jumping on the site that's going to stop doing so. And even if they do, you can't get anything on the site without somebody reviewing it. And keep in mind, I want to let you know, we do not review for validity. We review to make sure that it's going in the proper section in the proper geography. So if it's somebody's Little League game, it's not national news, which they will tell you it is. And front page news. It's sports news for that city. But if it's a high school game, it's sports news for the market. So it's just a matter of making sure you put it in the proper categories. But the marketplace will always let you know, Todd. If somebody, which by the way, it's only happened to me once, and I've been doing this a long time. In North Palm Beach, Florida, we used to have Little League teams posting the scores. And one day, one of the teams decided to change it so that they won the game. I must have got 50 emails.
What?
Yeah.
What?
But there's fake news right there.
It is fake news.
But the public let us know.
Yeah. That's actually one of the best parts about what it is that you're talking about, is it's actually made it interactive. Right. Before, it was just this forum of us consuming what was broadcast to us. And what you're doing is actually getting people involved in it. That's one of the things I really like about some of the podcasters that we work with, is they generate a lot of, it's engagement, but it's more than engagement. It's an investment. People get invested in the subject matter, and you really get a chance to parse issues when you get people that are so heavily invested in their views versus somebody else. It's what our founders of our nation called the marketplace of ideas. People get to throw that out, and then you parse it, and I really like that. I wanted to also understand, you've got an editorial function, but you're not actually getting involved in it. Are you actually helping people with editorializing things or driving them, or is that the Alex Newman function?
Well, that'll be the Alex Newman function, is for him to teach them how to become better news reporters. We're in the process right now of just onboarding them. In the last few months, I've picked up over 300 news reporters, which is kind of cool, right? And so some of the content creators are not as good as others. Okay. Some football players are not as good as others. So it's just the way it works, but the cream always rise to the top. That's just how it's going to work. And so, like YouTube, the marketplace decides what content they like. That's all it is. And you know, Todd, you're doing a podcast here. I mean, if you're lying to people, how long are you going to last?
Not
long at all, right?
You're gone.
The public's not stupid. So the only thing a journalist has is their credibility. It's their integrity. And the moment you lose it, it's over for you. So basically, they'll just weed themselves out.
Isn't that the best of all circumstances, right?
Free market? You're kidding.
It's so funny because it's so much the antithesis of everything that we were raised on, where you trusted the news. Then there became this great giant, rift. And he said, it's 2016, I saw the same thing. And then all of a sudden we're very distrustful. And it went from, quote unquote, conspiracy theorists sounding wacko to that is actually, now mainstream, and it's everybody else that is on the other side of the spectrum. What are you finding in your unique position as being the topics of highest interest by age group? Now, you ask that question. I've got a daughter in college, and I am always astounded at some of the information that's coming back vis-a-vis wrong information. And I'm just like, where they get? So by age group, let's say, young people all the way to college, what is their number one interest? And then the 25 to 44-year-olds.
Well, the 25 to 44-year-olds, probably more like the 30. Once you get married, you have a mortgage. Politics means something. So for the younger generation, most of the younger generation isn't really looking at news unless it's entertainment type stuff, right? Music stuff and maybe some movie stuff. Like I have people that do movie reviews, theater critics, right? But once they start getting a little older, then the politics matters. The I just want you to know this, because when you think of media companies, you're always thinking politics, right? And which side are they leaning? And the reality is 99% or higher of the content we carry is not political.
Wow. What is
Did
it?
you hear what I just said? It's not.
Yeah. No, I'm hearing it. That's why I'm fascinated. So what is the subject matter? What is it that people are after?
Local news.
Local news.
They want to
wanna
know what's happening in their community. That's what resonates most with people. And it just so happens that we have all the national news as well. So it's, at the end of the day, if you don't like what network TVs are saying, I don't care if it's local or national, you can't do
Right.
anything about it. And I had a friend of mine that worked for CBS 12 here in Palm Beach County, and I used to go have a beer with him at least once a week. We go sit down and have a beer after work. And I remember one day he grabbed my app and he saw the submit news button on there, and he came there specifically to insult me that we allow the public to interact. So he said, so here's how it went. He showed me the phone. He goes, "You have a submit news button. You allow the public to interact?" I go, "Yeah. No, you?" No, I knew they didn't.
Of course.
He's like, "We would never do that." I go, "That's why you're going to go out of business, dummy." And the woman next to me, I did not know, went, "Exactly."
Fabulous.
That's just exactly what she said. I go, "You're crazy." So somebody wants to put their opinion up, or their kid's little league game, or anything, right? How about how about an event or something going on?
Yes.
You won't allow it. So you know what we do, which means they post to me, and that stuff gets shared out to all their people, and everybody comes to me to consume that content because you're too stupid to understand what the public wants.
That's beautiful. I mean, that really is beautiful. And it's a means by which we take things back, because at the end of the day, all action is local, right? It's the school board, it's the city council, it's the county movements that have an effect on your life. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. Before we have John come back, because he's going to have his own questions, I want to understand Nico Ventures, because you also are allowing people the opportunity to invest in this enterprise. And I would tell you in advance that a huge segment of our audience are what you would call accredited investors. That's the typical ones. They tend to be established, interested in politics and the truth, and don't really want for much of anything. So these are like the kinds of people you'd want invested.
Nico Ventures is a holding company, very similar to News Corp owning Fox News. Okay, so your news is owned by Nico Ventures, and Nico Ventures exists simply because we plan on making a lot of different acquisitions. This is a roll-up model, and what I mean by that, it could be somebody has a horse racing or boxing website. I'm in the platform business, not in, and they're in the horse racing business. So they know more about horse racing news than you and I. So why don't you acquire that person, bring them under your umbrella, redirect all their traffic and their ad revenue, and now you got a fantastic horse racing section, and you give them scale. Make sense? I can do that 30 times over, right? So now you're just creating a better product for the end user. So we decided, rather than go to institutional players, which is the accredited investors, which makes up just 1% of the population. When I went, Todd, I went to a Reawaken America tour in Miami, and there were 5,000 people there, and they were all patriots. And I went, these are the people that need to own my product. And then somebody mentioned to me, you need to do an equity crowdfund. I went, what's that? And they said, well, it's because I'm thinking Give, Send, Go or GoFundMe, where it's donated. I'm not looking for donations. They said, no, it's a way that non-accredited people can participate. You could set the price at whatever you want. So I thought, what a freaking great idea. It took about 7 or 8 months to get set up, by the way. It wasn't exactly instant. But we didn't get rolling until about October, and then we had Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and then nobody did anything in January until the 3rd week is when it started. So really I haven't been doing that this long, but it allows the little guy to actually participate. So here's the plan I have. Rather than go to the institutional players, which to me would be creating the same problem that already exists. I mean,
it could do.
500 independent news outlets control mainstream media in the 80s. Today it's 6. You want to know why we're in the mess we're in? Because it's easier to control 6 people than it is 500. If I get, I'll make it up. If I'm doing a $5 million raise, I would rather get 5,000 people to give me $1,000 than one guy to give me $5 million. Because if you know anything about private equity, that money comes with strings. Okay.
Absolutely,
They
positively.
control you. And I do agree to some point, if you're a private equity firm or a hedge fund, you want to make sure that if somebody gives you that kind of money and then has more money behind it, that the CEO could actually pull it off. And if he can't, they need to get rid of him.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
the danger is, they're going to take control and eventually they could change the culture. So to me, I thought, if we can get tens of thousands of people, because I'm doing this round, I'm probably going to cut it short. I'm just telling you. I'm going to do this round, followed up by another one, followed up by a public offering. And the reason for the public piece is, number one, people want an exit. Number two,
Sure.
I actually think if we're a news organization that's truly supposed to put the power of the press in the hands of the people and
Right.
be all about the people, it shouldn't be owned by BlackRock or Vanguard, because
Good on you.
So I completely eliminated them. A whole game plan. I have a plan for this round. I have a plan for the next one, which will be much larger, but we'll bring in reinforcements and some what I would call star power to the table.
Good.
And we could because the people they want to control the not the narrative, but they want to have a free speech platform where they can be heard. They don't want to have somebody controlling the message to them. So
Yes.
to me, it's important that what we do remains a free speech platform, simply because if the legacy media is not going to survive, I will tell you what's going to replace it. It will be a hyper local news platform. So forget me, where the people can actually contribute to the narrative and have a voice. It'll have a monetization model like YouTube, where news reporters can contribute content and share in the ad revenue, and a self-service ad platform where Joe's Pizza can buy an ad and target it to one zip code and everywhere in between. There's no shot that that's wrong. That's where it's all going. So I just already happen to be up and running. Hell, I'm in the process of opening Canada, a whole nother country right now.
Fabulous.
I know.
Fabulous. Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, let's talk about Joe's Pizza for a minute, because that is such an important element of what you're talking about. And people would want to know this. How are you able to, or what are you able to do as it talks to, to the local community? Let's say you target Golden, Colorado, home of Coors, and there's Joe's Pizza right there. How many people can you deliver eyeballs to Joe? Joe wants eyeballs on his pizza. How many people at any particular market are you able to get?
The beauty is it's performance based, Todd. So it's on an impression. It's an impression based ad model, which means if you say to me, I sell golf clubs, I want to be around anybody reading golf, and I'm going to remember we used to buy the prepaid phone cards.
Sure.
$10, $20, right?
Sure.
So they have a budget. Could be $10, $100, doesn't matter. If nobody's reading the golf page in the market they're advertising in, they pay nothing. If 37 people read the golf page, they pay for 37 people. So they get exactly what they paid for, no matter what.
Beautiful.
And then if you have somebody has a big story that's breaking and you get a lot of traffic coming to that area, it'll just eat the ad up quicker, but that's what you paid for. You want views. And the other side of this is all ads are on a best bid basis. So the hyper local ads, the CPM rates are far higher than the national ads. National ads you get a penny for. Local ads, I get 10 and sometimes as much as 20 cents an impression. Like we're talking for a zip code. Like
that's real money.
There's 100 zip codes. I mean, you want to target one zip code because you're Joe's Pizza or some ice cream parlor. I mean, what could your bill be a month? $5, $10?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because you're buying a section. The customer doesn't care. They just want that spot. So ultimately, the way the media industry works is it's always the bigger brands that will always, supersede the little guys. In our business, it's the exact opposite. That's why I'm saying,
beautiful.
Oh God, yeah. So the little guys win. So my goal would be to have a couple of million little customers all over the United States, because at that point in time, but basically 86 is all the national ads. And the people resonate with the local ice cream parlor, the local drugstore, the local pizza place, and the local grocery store. So that's a big undertaking, which, this is where capital comes in. And this is why we're doing a capital raise, simply because I don't need anyone's money, Todd, to figure this model out.
No, you have it.
Oh God, it's already, it's easy. The next step is, how do I take those 500,000 people on LinkedIn and those 200,000 students and move them over to our platform?
Right. Okay. That's not an easy task.
Well, it's just a marketing thing.
Yeah.
It's all it is marketing and building the brand. And the other side of this is, you know how on YouTube there's millions, tens of millions of people that have never been in the news business before that are now broadcasting.
Sure. Yeah,
And when
of
I say
course.
tens of millions, 114 million people have a YouTube channel. Doesn't mean they're all active.
Whoa.
114 million. So
Wow.
the value of Alphabet, last I checked, which was 3-4 weeks ago, was $2 trillion. It could be a little less or a
My
little more,
Lord
right?
above.
And then you have Rumble, which
Yeah.
filled a void. And I'm going to guess there was 10 or 20,000 people in the US kicked off of YouTube. I mean, come on.
Yes.
That's,
Easy.
yeah, I
Easy.
mean, but 20, if you ever go into a hockey game or a basketball game, there's 20,000 people. You look around, I mean, that's a lot of
Right.
people.
That's
That
right.
void they filled, and they have a $2 billion market cap. So
Fantastic.
they just have to hope that YouTube doesn't change their mind. And
Well, I think YouTube probably can't, because when you see those big corporations, Meta et al., Google, they are politicized, and the problem is why they're censoring. And frankly, Rumble's doing the same thing. People are chronically complaining about being censored, myself included. So as long as they are hiding the truth, they are going to be made irrelevant, and that supports your business model and mine for that matter. John, I bet you're in the background wanting to ask questions because I know how you roll, and you've got some good ones undoubtedly. Come on back and do your, what do you call that thing on your noggin?
A Kagoo.
Kagoo. Thank you.
Samuel L. Jackson
Kagoo.
really made them
Okay,
famous.
good.
So you know, I'm on yournews.com right now, and one thing that I'm noticing, looking in an article, is that you don't have pictures of feet, skin tags, toenail fungus. What's going on? I mean, these are big ads that Google Ads puts on conservatives' websites.
yes, I don't accept Google Ads. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So have you considered taking this ad platform that you're building and using it with other websites like, I don't know, worldtribune.com or even Gateway Pundit, like ones that may not necessarily fit within your news, but could benefit from your ad sales, and your ad sales could then benefit from having additional platforms. Is that anything on your radar?
You know, I thought about, you know, like there's obviously power in numbers, and, you know, part of the roll up thing is, you know, if, you know, when we get successful with the capital raises and we bring money is there could be strategic partners that you bring in that all get rolled up under one, which now makes you a media powerhouse. Okay. And where the advertising, when somebody says advertise on any one of those platforms, it could give you want to advertise here, want to hear it here, or you want all three or five, whatever it is. Yeah, I've thought about that, but we haven't got to that stage yet. But so in other words, you know, I could have local advertisers in Chicago, Illinois, want to jump onto Cloud Hub or onto another platform or whatever, and we need to make that seamless for them, where it could happen. So that yes, that's always been in the background. I know what needs to get done. We focus on, you know, right now the situation at hand, which is my job is to onboard journalists, which is we're marketing for that, and to bring in the proper capital. Because, you know, I'm just going to tell you guys, we probably get an average of 200 to 250 news stories a day from outside journalists. Okay.
Wow.
Which is we look at them just to make sure that they're, you know, that there's nothing bad. And then we will approve them to the sub. First of all, they're all pre-set up. But if somebody's writing a Biden story or a Trump story, we might say that's national news. And then I have a national editor, and she'll grab stuff and make it front page because it's that good. We have actually really good writers.
Yeah. And
so that's fine as long as you have no more than 400 or 500. But what happens when we get to 5,000 news reporters and 10,000 and 100,000? Remember, there's 20,000 cities. So if I have 10,000 news reporters, that's one person a city. You haven't even begun. I mean, what I see is like, and I think you guys are going to really like this. YouTube, nobody for the most part was a broadcast journalist on YouTube. Anybody could just set up and have a cooking show, or you could talk about politics. Well, what I see is somebody who's proactive in the community, who is, you know, who's like everybody knows them, and they go to all the city council meetings, the school board meetings. that person can actually sign up to become a citizen journalist that's monetized. They could go to the school board meeting, write a story, run it through AI if they have to get the proper article they want, submit it to us and share it with the community. And that's your next news reporter. So what this does is it opens it up to everybody. Everybody. That's the cool part.
That's beautiful.
This is why the mainstream media, do you remember, and I don't remember the guy's name, but he was from Axios and he was speaking in front of all the journalists at the Journalist of America thing. Do you remember that? When he said, they need us. We do the hard work, right? I just wish I was there because I just wanted to eat his lunch on that one. All of them are irrelevant, completely irrelevant, because what's going to replace them is going to be a whole new set of people. And it's going to be people that probably were never in the industry before, kind of like you, Todd, who have never worked for NBC or ABC or CNN or ESPN. Have you? No,
God, no.
And all of a sudden, you now have an audience, and the marketplace is going to decide whether they like you or not.
Well, I think they like you, by the way, because I'm sitting here looking at it. There's almost 5,000 people showed up to watch you. So I think you're actually the draw today, Sam. So thank you for that. It's working. It's working. Yeah, very cool.
I want to say one more thing, and then, John, I'm sure you got questions. In the Communist Party, the first thing they do is they control the press. Because if you have a free press, you don't want people getting out information, right? How do you control them? So you have to give them the information you want.
Right.
And so what we witnessed with our own country was the same thing. People in Canada used to tell me, you need to help us. We don't have a First Amendment here. We have state-controlled media. And then we find out from USAID, we had state-controlled media too, under the guise of BS. So it's very important that we never go back to that. And what I do will actually become the next mainstream media. Keep in mind, I said what I do. Somebody else could build a platform like this with hyper-local news, bring in their own team, and they could beat me to the punch because they have $1 billion. But the point is, this is what will replace it. So my goal is to make sure that we're never in that mess again. That's why I'm doing this.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I've had a conversation once with one of the executives with patch.com, which also is kind of where they try to make local news, but also they were completely uninterested in my movie, any of the fraud I was uncovering. It was actually resistance to even discussing it. I've never watched someone flee.
Wow.
How many years ago was this?
From a meeting. This was probably about 2 years ago.
Not that long ago. So AOL didn't own them at the time. They sold.
No. So had they purchased Patch? Is that what happened?
AOL was the one who started it, and they put $300 million into it, and then they pulled the plug. And oh my God, it was a disaster. I called a few of their markets and talked to they had an editor in every market. They were given 50 or 60 grand. Right. Basically, they had about 120,000 in payroll per city. Anybody want to do the math on that? Yeah. Okay. So bye-bye. It's easy to spend money when you're burning other people's money. When when you're spending your own, it becomes,
Yeah, I think they did become a bit more profitable, or at least they after AOL was out of the picture, realistic management came into the system. But yeah, it's difficult to get a willingness to investigate things that maybe are a little more uncomfortable than the average person wants to understand.
And we get that stuff. Okay, I get it already. I had a story last week from Kat Espinda out of Washington, the state of Washington. And it was a story on child sex trafficking, which we all know they're not publishing that stuff, but we do. And I never saw the story until I got an email on Saturday morning, and it was from somebody, a reader, and they said, can you do me a favor and change the word from kid trafficking to child trafficking? So I'm thinking to myself, oh God, you can't let it go. But then as I'm reading, it says, I apologize. I know it's petty, but I'm a survivor of child sex trafficking.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I looked the woman's name up. I went, oh my God. Yes. I changed it right away for her. Yeah. So, I'm assuming that, Kat wrote the story and then she shared it out to probably someone who was on her show. Maybe that was somebody on her show or something like that. But then that got dispersed. It was like, you guys know Mark Fincham from Arizona?
Sure.
Okay, so Mark is one of my journalists, and Mark put out a story, and it was the one with, it was the guy I never remember, Sean from Tennessee. He was the sheriff, or not
Sean
sheriff.
Taylor.
Sean Taylor.
Yeah.
Taylor. Well, Mark Fincham wrote that story, broke it on my site. Okay. And that story got so much traction. The mainstream media never picked it up. They had a press conference in Las Vegas.
A hit job. Yeah, it was actually he was my whistleblower client. We actually represented him to make sure that he didn't run afoul of the laws. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And it was co-opted. What actually happened is people descended on him to ensure that he would never be seen or heard from, except for Mark Fincham, who got involved to save the day. But the press conferences were absolutely subverted, positively.
That's sick to me. I mean, what the
hell? It is sick. Well,
they're
hiding the truth. That's what they do. They are actively involved in subverting the truth, and that was a good example of it.
I think what I have is going to end up turning into the next WikiLeaks.
I hope so.
But the good news is since 99% of my traffic is local news, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see, it doesn't matter if it's national or local, you're going to have a lot of people come forward now that they know that there's no consequences with damaging information that they have. It could be like, for the local Omaha Mirror, right? It doesn't matter. But that type of stuff is going to start getting submitted to us. And then we'll have a journalist look at it. And if it's accurate, we'll run it. If they want to write the story themselves, we'll put it as an op-ed. The point is that everything gets run. That's the point. Yeah. And you let the public decide. So we decide, this is the cool part. So remember this, give it 7-8 years, the legacy media is not even going to be around. But now what happens is all these stories coming into us, we have a national editor that's grabbing stuff and making it front page news. And you might have 50,000 articles that come in, right? So you'll have local editors in different DMAs, which there's 210, that will say this thing you need to take a look at this to go national. It could be like a sports story. It could be, a business article, something. And then the editors in those categories will grab them and decide whether they want them as national news.
Sure. News aggregation. That's helpful.
So you'll have the local people saying this looks good for national, or this looks good for state, because they can only control their DMA, and DMA is like TV markets. We're set up for TV markets. Same thing.
We're almost out of time, but as far as SLAPP lawsuits, strategic lawsuits against public participation, how do you handle liability if, say, a journalist gets it wrong?
So we're covered under Section 230. The journalist is responsible for their own content. We have a disclaimer when they submit an article. It says you're responsible for this content. You accept responsibility. And at the bottom of every article, it says your news has no idea whether this is accurate or not. You're on your own. So we disclaim ourselves away from that. And we're just the vehicle. Kind of like if you used an Apple phone and called a hitman to kill somebody, Apple's not responsible.
Theoretically.
Well, that's good.
Lawyers, they're always the root of all the trouble.
By the time we get there, it's a good thing. That means
it's a good problem to have. That's brilliant. Yeah. So, Sam, thank you. What a wonderful experience this has been for me. You sparked all kinds of ideas in my mind to understand how effectively you've been able to do this in a short period of time. It's really, really impressive. We'd love to be helpful to you in any way that we can. Our platform, our tools are yours because we're in the truth business like you. So thank you for being here today. How do people find you? What's the best way to reach you and to support you?
Sure. If you want to reach out to me directly, it's sam@yournews.com. If you want to become a citizen journalist, just go to Your News. I know you're going to have them in the underneath part, right?
We will. We'll have the notes.
Yeah, but you just go to Your News, go to the bottom, it says become a citizen journalist. You fill out the application. Anybody interested in making an investment, it says invest down there. Sure. You can read about it. If you formulate your own conclusion, if you like it, make an investment. That's pretty much it. And then Todd, on another note, maybe there's something you and I could do together.
Yeah, I'd love to explore that. Because we're doing the same thing differently. It'd be fun to collaborate with you. I'd really like that.
Yeah, you're there. That's the application right
There
there.
we
You
go.
just fill that out and it comes in. We look at it and then we activate it. You get an email with instructions, and the other one's at the bottom of the page. The Nico Ventures Invest, it says.
Beautiful. Sorry, one thing I just want to ask you real quick before we go. Nico Ventures, you're raising money now. What's the target that you're looking to raise? Because people want to know.
We have a $5 million target. I'll
Okay.
probably pull it at about between $1 million and $1.5 million because we're already making massive headway.
Good.
And the beauty is the costs to do this are not massive. However, the bigger you get, like if I had 10,000 news reporters,
Yes.
you're going to have an infrastructure in place to be able to handle all that stuff. So that's no different than Facebook. As long as you have one user, you're fine. If you have 1 billion, you better have an infrastructure in place for that. So
that's right.
That's pretty much it. But this is a highly profitable model. There's certainly going to be, when you're scaling this thing to build your customer base, you're going to be in the red before you go to the black. But at the end of the day, it's all user-driven content, which drives your audience. And here's the most important piece. The void we fill is from an industry's collapse. There is nobody in this space. Nobody. That's the beauty.
That is the beauty, and I like it very much, and I would love to have a chat with you about that, how best to support your efforts. So, folks, let's get behind Sam, join. There's a lot of really smart people that are on Clout Hub. It's really fun if you haven't trolled around to see what these people are saying, but we're the God, Guns, and Country platform, and there's a lot of those that will support what you're doing. John, thanks to you, Melissa, the rest of the Vax Choice and Clout Hub family. Sam, it's a joy to have you here. God bless you for what it is you're doing. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys, for having me here. I appreciate it. And Todd, let me know when you want to have a conversation. I think you have my cell phone, don't you?
I'm going to send you a note right now. We'll trade numbers.
I think I may have yours. Let me just look. Hold on.
Don't say it out loud, please.
I won't.
It rings all day as it is. I don't answer it because I can't.
Hold on. I think this was you and Ann Vandersteel hooked us up a while back. Here.
Okay.
Did you get it? Did you see anything?
I haven't seen it yet, but we'll. I definitely got your email, so we'll do it that. Yeah, I think that's it. Standby one, just to make sure. Area code 561. Yep. All right. Look forward to it. Sam, thanks, man.
Bye.
God bless, guys. See ya.
Goodbye.